We're starting?
Yeah. Who knows what's going to happen? I hit the record button right away when you're around.
Exactly. Absolutely, exactly. And I know that you know that, which is why I'm not surprised that you just did that.
Hello, I'm John J. Thompson. We've talked several times about the wonderfully eclectic cast of characters who found each other in the radical fringes of the Christian music underground back in the 80s and early 90s, often at or around the vaunted Cornerstone Festival. My life has been so enriched by this extended community, from the normal to the outsiders, because I always felt like an outsider myself, and this clan made me feel right at home, like I belonged, and they still do. Today, we'll visit with one of the oddest members of that tribe to talk about his journey, yes, but also about another artist who made his name by mainstreaming outsider, nonconformist, oddball status. Join us as Allan Aguirre of Scaterd Few and Spyglass Blue and I discuss the legacy of David Bowie. A bit later in the show, we'll crank up the True Tunes Jukebox to check out several of Allan's own musical alter egos, with a special emphasis on the 1990 classic Sin Disease. I've long been fascinated by David Bowie's artistic instincts, his ability to gather sounds and images from the edges of society, and his insight into the human condition. And I won't lie, I got pretty emotional at the end of Brett Morgen's Moon Age Daydream film. The mind-blowing pastiche of interview clips, performance footage, art house elements, animation, and carefully organized mythic storytelling. So, I decided to call the one friend I knew who is even more of a Bowie fan and student than I am, Allan Aguirre, to see what might happen.
I've nothing much to offer. There's nothing much to take. I'm an absolute beginner. I'm absolutely sane. As long as we're together, the rest can go to hell. I absolutely love you. Absolute beginners. With eyes completely open.
We'll be absolute beginners right after we take care of a little bit of housekeeping.
Hey, this is Ray, and I'm a Patreon supporter of the True Tunes podcast. If you want to join me and the other supporters of this show, you can start with a monthly donation of $5, $10, or $20, which helps to cover the cost of producing and hosting the show. As a thanks for our support, we get early access to episodes and high-quality, lossless WAV files of each episode that we can download. We also have occasional Zoom meetups, some special live streams, discounts on True Tunes swag, and more. You can join me by visiting patreon.com/TrueTunes or finding the link on the show notes page. If an ongoing patronage thing is not the right fit for you, but you'd like to give us a tip to help with the cost associated with this show, you can find links for that on the show notes page. Thanks, and now back to the music.
If you're not familiar with Allan Aguirre, well, I'm looking forward to introducing you. He's someone I can disagree with about something political or even theological, sometimes fiercely, and yet we've remained friends for decades. I ran an interview with Allan under his old pseudonym Rommel Domkus in the old print mag days of True Tunes that got us both in a bit of hot water. He's someone I always looked forward to spending time with at Cornerstone or later at smaller events in Nashville or elsewhere because I knew a wild ride of a conversation was in store. I also knew that, as crazy and out there as he could sometimes seem, Allan is a devoted family man, a compassionate observer of people, a deep thinker, and someone willing to take risks to find answers. So, join me now in the True Tunes interview suite as Allan Aguirre and I grapple with a spiritual appreciation of an artist we both loved, David Bowie.
Wake up, you sleepyhead. Put on some clothes, shake up your bed. Put another log on the fire for me. I made some breakfast and coffee. Look out my window, what do I see? A crack in the sky and a hand reaching down to me. All the nightmares came today, and it looks as though they're here to stay. Oh, you pretty things, don't you know you're driving your
There's no warning here, man.
Let me move
No
the screen
warm-up
over.
necessary.
What was that?
I said no warm-up necessary.
Oh, yeah, not at all. So it's really interesting. So in 2019, I was gone like once a month, like May through October, traveling, speaking, conferences, television, churches, home things, because of the book stuff, right? So I'm out there speaking, teaching on the books and stuff. So 2019 was a really good year for getting out there. And so I determined that, instead of doing a fly out, which gets you to maybe one city, right? I'm gonna do some overlanding, right? So I have like this Ford Expedition, and so I'm gearing it all up to literally hit the road like 3 weeks a month and just like deadhead and then hang out for 2 or 3 weeks in a region and cover more ground, right? And cover more towns and stuff like that. Right? And so I'm all prepped to do this 2019. I'm like, man, I'm going to hit the road. It's going to be awesome. And then what happens, right?
Right.
Here's what's really interesting. The Lord told me what I was calling the tele-evangelist portion of my ministry. He was telling me to ramp that part up, that piece up. So I was getting cameras and I was getting lights and I was getting all this gear to ramp up the tele-evangelist portion of my ministry. And I didn't know why, because I was going to be on the road. And so I've been doing a thing on Tuesday morning for the last 4.5 years called a Chameleon Church Show. Every Tuesday morning we're doing this thing. And it's almost like a time capsule, and it's highly prophetic because it's very organic. No, it's not scripted. I have no idea what we're going to talk about, and God shows up like powerful. People are healed. It's just crazy. Because
All online.
all online, yeah. So all of a sudden, right, whether I wanted to stay home or not, or whether I felt safe or whatever to travel, nobody else was letting anybody in. And so when the Lord told me, remember the Lord in 2019 told me to ramp up my live streaming capabilities, cameras, lights, and all that to say, I live stream 5 times a week. I have a Monday night thing, and we meet every Monday night, right? So I read the weekly devotional, then we do a Q&A, and when I'm waiting for people, right? So anyway,
I am talking with my old friend, Allan Aguirre, and it is Monday morning, and you've obviously had your coffee. That's great.
well, you know what?
Right.
So, the last 20 some odd years, I work for myself. I work for myself from home virtually. Even if I'm doing freelance stuff, it's usually from my home, whether I'm in the office in front of a computer or the recording studio or whatever. The majority of my life, my schedule has been, get up around 8 or 9. By 9 or 10, I'm working. I work till 6. 6 to 10, 6 to 11, it's dinner. When we first started living together back in 1985, she insisted that we do dinner around the table. And I didn't grow up like that. I only experienced that when I lived in Guatemala with my uncle and aunt. But anyway, so we've been doing dinner at the table Monday through Friday since day one. So dinner at 6 with the kids and the wife and it's family, 6 to 10, 6 to 11. And then everyone goes to sleep and I go back to work till about 2. So that's been my life for a very, 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 very long time. Well, when this COVID thing hit, she's now at home and we're going to bed at 8:30, watching TV and hanging out. It's like it totally, for the last 2 years, totally screwed up my routine. And so just as of late, I've been like, okay, I got to stop doing. So I've been getting up like at 6 in the morning. So I've been up for 4 hours already. I've been getting up at 6 in the morning, spending some time with the Lord. I don't do that whole traditional quiet time thing. So I'm awake. I've been awake for 4 hours.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. It's great to see you. And
likewise.
I wanted to talk to you. It's funny because I'd done a little backstage interview with you before we even had the podcast going, and I had no idea what it was going to be. We happened to be in the same room, and I got my recorder out and we just randomly talked. And I thought, oh, this should work for whatever it is. But then as the show has evolved, it's like that particular thing just hasn't felt yet like what we're doing. And
right.
I thought we could probably do this better. And then this David Bowie film came out, and I've been wanting to talk about Bowie ever since we started the show, and I've wanted to talk about Bowie with you. And so I thought, well, this is a great excuse to get Allan back on the horn. And then you happened to reach out to me the other day, and I thought, let's just do this. First, for those who don't know, you were part of Scaterd Few. You were one of those early bands that was really, as far as my understanding, my recollection was you guys were kind of more a mainstream sort of punk band with a lot of weird kind of alternative influences, not straight up normal punk. You were punk with reggae and ska influences, but then you kind of migrated into the sort of very far left fringes of that sort of alternative underground scene in the 90s, and you guys were sort of like a colonist's way on the dark side of the moon of that world. But when I first heard you with that album Sin Disease, I remember thinking, these guys like Bowie too, but it wasn't obvious. It's not like you were doing Bowie from the hits, but there was an element of that. But you definitely didn't sound like anything that had come out of the Christian music underground, and you really didn't remind me of anything I had heard straight up. Most music at that point was like, oh, this sounds like this, or this sounds like this. You guys kind of had a hodgepodge of different things, and then with your vocal approach, it just was like something totally different. So tell me, before we get started talking about Bowie, tell me about your musical background in a nutshell, and where Scaterd Few came from, and how that sound evolved.
So my uncle got saved when I was like 7, and he gave me his entire Beatles catalog. But by the time I was 5, I'm in the car, I'm hearing a lot of radio, a lot of Motown, a lot of English Invasion, right? And so Motown, English Invasion, Donovan, all that, the Kinks, all that in the late 60s. And then, as I got older, after, 9, 10, 11, funk, like the real funk. Parliament, Funkadelic, and, just Ohio Players, even the Commodores were doing some stuff, and just that whole thing, that late 70s thing, that funk rock thing. And then summer of 76, I was barely 12 years old. I was at a swap meet, and I was walking. I know this is going to sound weird, but it actually happened. I wouldn't tell you, you know me, I'm not going to tell you something that's not true. It was like a freaking tractor beam, whomp, and there's this album, and it just tractor beamed me into it. And I was like, and I knew it was weird and odd, and something was going on while that was happening, but I just went with it. And it was a black and white photo of a guy, portrait of a guy doing this with his hand, and changes one Bowie. And I flipped it around. I had no idea who it was. Flipped it around. And then the last 3 songs were Golden Years, Fame, and Young Americans. I knew those 3 songs and I liked them. So my uncle had Young Americans when it came out. And so I remember hearing it. I thought the guy was black like everybody else did. But he wasn't. It's this English guy, you know. So I bought this record, went home, listened to the 3 tracks I knew, and decided, well, let's flip it over and see what happens. And the first song was about this Major Tom guy, and I remember yelling, "Oh my God, Mom, remember that song I loved, my favorite song when I was 5 about that Major Tom guy? Well, it's this guy." Right. So I had this connection from like 1969 with this guy without even knowing it. I remember somebody trying to show me Ziggy Stardust when I was 11, and I didn't get it. And then I remember Young Americans, Fame, and I remember Golden Years and hearing that on the radio and stuff. And now I have this greatest hits album. And so I just got there, man. I held on tight, and I went through each song in a row. Man, forget about it. And so I went to my second. I'm the oldest. I don't have an older brother. People are introduced to this stuff by an older brother. I have no one. I was doing this all on my own. So I got a hold of my second, because I remember seeing a picture of remember Lou Reed Transformers on his wall. He's got that poster, and he's about 6 or 7, 8 years older than I am, and I'm 12 at the time. And so I went to him. I go, "I discovered David Bowie. I found Bowie," or should I say, he found me. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah." And I go, "And I knew you were the guy to talk to because you have a picture of that guy." And then then he starts explaining to me how Bowie produced Transformer. I don't know anything. And I go, "Okay, well, I got this album. It's the greatest hits. What do I do?" And he goes, "Just start." And he started giving me a little list of what to buy. And I think by the second record, I bought them chronologically. That's how the Bowie thing happened. That took me down a certain path for the rest of my life when it came to music. I've never been long hair. I've never liked hard rock, heavy metal, none of that stuff. So by the time I'm 13, 14, guess what? I look like these guys from England that call themselves punk rock, right? Why? Because they're all Bowie kids. All the punk rockers. Susie and the Banshees, everybody that came out of England between 1975, 76, 77, 78, 79 were all Bowie kids. They were all about Bowie. Everything from, like I said, Susie and the Banshees, the Buzzcocks, right? Who do you think they're trying to sound like? All the way to Bauhaus and on. Because of his fascination with America, with Iggy Pop and the Warhol scene, right? Velvet Underground and Lou Reed and all that. That's why Ziggy Stardust sounds so proto-punk. Right? So there's a foundation there. If you listen to 2 or 3 songs, I mean, there's some stuff from The Man Who Sold the World that could be, right? But then you've got Hang On to Yourself, Suffragist City. This is like pre-punk.
Right.
So those kids are listening to that. So they're already in that mindset. That's why it's so easy for that transition to happen with the punk rockers, because they were copying his hair, his makeup, even some of his fashion sense. They're shaving the eyebrows. So when I saw these punk rockers in a magazine when I was 14, I'm like, because I didn't fit in. I didn't fit in with any of the cliques at school. I was the Bowie freak. And so I'm looking at people in a magazine that look just like me, and I'm like, oh, well, they're calling themselves punk rockers and they're all into Bowie. I must be a punk rocker, you know.
I'm down, Benjamin.
It seemed to me that Bowie was straddling the Beatlesy pop sensibilities with some of the progressive rock theatrics, and that the punk world, a lot of those kids did not have any musical sensibilities or training or abilities at all. And so when you took a kid who doesn't know how to play music and say, okay, I want to be like Bowie, so you strip out music theory, you strip out musical finesse, what you're left with is the fashion and a couple of chords, and you get Anarchy in the UK. You get,
and the aggressive DIY thing.
Right. That seems to me to be the element of that British punk thing, where like with the Ramones, they're leaning a little bit more into Phil Spector and that California 60s pop without finesse. Yes. The British kids are leaning into Bowie and prog rock really without the finesse or the skill. And so they're kind of having to strip it down. And it's not that unlike me at 12 when I start playing music, and it's like, well, I love everything from, you know, Talking Heads and new wave stuff to Eagles to, you know, whatever, Kansas, but I can't play all the chords, so I just play the ones I can play, you know, and what I lack in dexterity I make up for in bravado, and I play it faster and louder, and I just try to, you know, BS my way through it. And I'm realizing now as I listen back, I'm like, oh, I can hear between Suffragette City and Anarchy in the UK, it's just kind of like untalented kids with a lot of swagger, you know, they're like a cover band of that stuff.
Right. And then new wave came out of that too, you know, and
with
even
a little bit more skill. Like then you get the Police and you're like, now these guys actually know how to play music, you know?
Exactly. And even the goth stuff. So there's all these genres that actually do originate with this one single guy. You know, and his background. I mean, Lennon he was a Beatle fan. He was into Lennon. He was into Dylan. He was into Little Richard was his first introduction to that. So he was all about that jazz and that black soul stuff. He was always into that. Those are his roots, you know.
You know I never dance with a nerve. I saw her standing there. Oh yes, I saw her standing there. A pretty little girl, she's standing there. Just sweet 16, she's standing there. She's 17, she's standing there. She may be black, no, she's standing there. She may be white, yeah, she's standing there. She may be brown, standing there. She may be yellow, she's everywhere. She's standing there, Lord, standing there. I got to stand there, wanna stand there. She's standing there, so sweet, oh, so sweet.
So do you think that understanding this, at least the musical cultural significance of Bowie early on, part of it is understanding him not as an originator, but as an interpreter of other things, the way the Beatles were interpreting rock and roll, they were interpreting blues and bringing it to another generation? Is that kind of what Bowie was doing? He was such a fan and a student who's kind of taking these things and
he admitted to that from the very beginning. He called himself a collector. I'm a collector and I'm an actor and I collect all this stuff and then I regurgitate it. But yes, he's very much so that. That's why he's called the chameleon and blah, blah, blah. He did that and he did it really well. I mean, Young Americans, for example, that whole blue-eyed soul thing that he did, disco thing he did, was literally ripping off the Philadelphia scene. This is pre-disco. And so he just surrounded himself with those people, you know, Carlos Alomar and Luther Vandross. And what he came out with was original.
Bowie is always going to take me somewhere, whether I agree with the conclusions he comes up with or not. He's at least trying to take the thing inside out, expose its guts, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, philosophically. He's kind of trying to lay it all out there.
Yeah.
At least by the... When do you think that happened? When I go back, I don't know that he starts off that way. Like he kind of grows into that thoughtfulness. Do you agree? Like it seems like
I agree.
He stumbled into it. Maybe like some point he was like, "This is getting boring." Just being the
Well, you know,
Aladdin saying like, "I want to do something a little bit more. I want to hang some meat on these bones.
So between 64 and 66, 67, he's like doing what everybody else is doing, musically. He's trying to be just like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. He's doing what everybody else is doing. He had 11 major label consecutive single failures between 1964 and 1966, 67. That's a bunch. He was actually like a teenage celebrity. He was actually, he was a model, he sang, he was in movies, commercials. Then he put on this whole Anthony Newley thing for almost 2 years.
Volavo felice, buen alto del sole ancora più su. Mentre il mondo pian piano spariva lontano laggiù. Una musica dolce suonava soltanto per me.
Then he did the hippie thing. Then he did the pop culture thing with Space Oddity. And then he reinvents himself and into what we would see a version of for like the next 20 plus 30 years. I think that we can attribute that to the two things. One, again, he's a collector and he was like a crazy reader. This guy read everything and anything. And so he just stored all this. The guy was an intellectual. The Man Who Sold the World, Honky Dory, and Ziggy Stardust all were written and recorded and released within an 18-month period of time. That's insane.
That is insane. Yeah.
And then but then if you keep looking at the dates of when things were recorded and released, even then, Aladdin Sane, Pinups, Young Americans, there's only like 2.5 years difference between Aladdin Sane and Young Americans. And that's like such a leap.
Too long blonde hair and your eyes are blue. The only thing I ever got from you was sorrow. Sorrow. You're acting funny, trying to spend my money. You're out there playing your high-class games of sorrow. Sorrow. You never do what you know you ought to. Something tells me you're the devil's daughter. Sorrow.
For you in the 80s, as you started to write your own music and come up with Scaterd Few, how did you allow this fandom, this enthusiasm for what he had done to inform what you were doing with Scaterd Few? And as you look back on it, how do you see those fingerprints appearing?
Yeah, I think lyrically and some of the arrangements, and I was able to filter it though. I was like straining it through a filter of Bauhaus because that would be like the new version, right?
Right.
It's like, here's a Bowie version for the 80s. So for Scaterd Few, being able to filter that through a Bauhaus filter, and I think you're going to see it in the lyrics and maybe some of the arrangements, like subtly in the arrangements, because foundationally we were doing more of a Bad Brains thing.
Did you ever pick up on any sort of intentionality? Did you think Bowie was trying at some point to impact or influence the way his audience saw the world and lived their lives?
I think that probably, I'm going to say, based on the material and the interviews and then his career path, I think he only really started realizing that by Scary Monsters. And Teenage Wildlife would be a good indication of that.
Same old thing in brand new drag, come sweeping as ugly as a teenage million there, pretending it's a whiskered world. You'll take me aside and say, David, what shall I do? They wait for me in the hallway.
Now you're all the way now to station, and he bails, leaves LA, goes to Germany. Now you've got Low, Heroes, and Lodger. He's now starting to think a little bit differently in his approach, in his delivery, in his songwriting, in his lyrics. And then he does Scary Monsters, where he literally does talk about, because see, by now, people are doing the tom-tom beat. It's a brand new, same old thing in brand new drag. He literally is talking about all those new wave bands that are coming up. I think that comes into play then, because then what does he do? He starts doing a little bit more film. He does Broadway, and then he sits down and says, I want to make a hit album.
Right.
And that's what he does in '83.
I know when to go out, know when to stay in, get things done. I catch the paper boy when things don't really change. I'm standing in the wind, but I never wave bye-bye. But I try. There's no sign of life, it's just the power to charm. I'm lying in the rain, but I never wave bye-bye. But I try. Never gonna fall for walks beside me, walks on fire.
Okay, so now with Moon Age Daydream, this thing
man.
just slayed me.
Yeah.
And bringing my youngest son Jesse to see it, and Michelle. Jesse said at the end, we sat through all the credits, and that little benediction that he gives at the very end was just unbelievable. And then Jesse said, I don't think I was really prepared for the rush of serotonin that was going to go through my brain watching that thing. But one of the things that struck me about the film was his willingness to not only everybody talks about his reinvention. That's one thing. Artists often do that just for the sake of marketing. Like, you've got to have a fresh product to sell. But his willingness to say, yeah, that thing I said back then, I don't think I agree with that anymore. I've got a better idea now. And the way his view of his need for other people, or lack thereof early on, that he really did need love, he needed to open himself up, was pretty profound. It did feel to me that by the end, he was delivering some very profound messages. It felt like he was really trying to get those who had ears to hear to really consider the path they were on, the things they were thinking, the way they were feeling and stuff.
The middle of the movie, they were talking about love and his need for love or whatever. They then cut into, I think, the Madison Square Garden footage from his birthday in '97, and he's doing pretty much doing a solo rendition of Space Oddity. The lyric, you got to remember, I've been listening to that song since I was 5. Right. So that's like, 53 stinking years.
Right.
And I had never heard it or seen it like that before. One of the most exciting things I got to do was to sit down with my grandson, who's 12 now, and he's literally a mini-me, and go, look, Major Tom, Space Oddity. Look, Major Tom, Ashes to Ashes. Look, Loving the Alien. Look, Black Star, there's Major Tom, they found his body in the rocks on a planet. And he's like, and watching his mind make the connection that this has been a 50-year saga of this one astronaut, right? That was pretty exciting. So I had a moment like that myself watching the movie, because I'm watching him do this version by himself of Space Oddity, not a new version, but I heard the lyrics differently than I've ever heard before. He's freaking talking about himself. And the alienation that he's done to himself, and it was just incredibly sad. Like, it was tragically sad. Did he become Major Tom? I mean, obviously he does talk about the characters he came up with were inside of him. That's why they existed. You walk into a room with a mask, you're whoever you want them to think you are.
This is ground control to Major Tom. You've really made it great. And the pipers want to know whose shirts you wear. Now it's time to leave the capsule every day. This is Major Tom to ground control. I'm stepping through the door, and I'm floating in the most peculiar way. And the stars look very different today. For here am I sitting in my tinker. Earth is blue, and there's nothing I can do.
To me, the implication of recognizing that level of alienation, that level of self-harm or isolation or whatever happened to Tom that left him there in the dark and all of that. There's a certain kind of artistic projection that then says, well, for one thing, it's what's happened in the meantime to Tom, but there's the second thing is, do you want to be that or do you want something else? Because the Lazarus Project, to me, it's almost like Tom gets a resurrection. Like there's an opportunity to do it again, and maybe that's what love provides for Bowie, is a chance to come back from the dead. Do you think that I'm reading too much into it to think that Lazarus and the final couple of albums are him trying to bring that stuff to something a little bit more human and a little bit more literal?
What I see the Lazarus Project being is, hey, you know what? I think I'm running out of time, and I've been wanting to do a Broadway thing since the 70s. So I'm going to do it now, because I thought that was kind of a half-ass attempt.
Really?
I thought so.
I thought it was a requiem. I thought it was basically
I think it's him trying to get
his own passing.
I think it was him trying to get something done that he always wanted to do, just so he could say he did it. His birthday, 2013, he releases a single. Nobody knows he's even making a record. He's been working on this record for 2 years secretly, and nobody knows. Nothing. Robert Fripp was brought in to potentially play guitar, and these guys were signing NDAs and all this, because it was literally a secret project, and it went on for 2 years, and then out of nowhere on his birthday, he releases this single, Where Are We Now? But it's the end of the single. It's the end of the video of and he's talking about his time in Germany, the 3 or 4 years he spent in Germany. I post it every once in a while. There's this amazing black and white picture of Bowie, Eno, and Fripp sitting around the board at Hands Up by the Wall. Can you imagine the brain trust?
I know.
Oh my gosh. I've met Eno once. He's shorter than I am.
There's people shorter than you?
Wow. All right.
I'm 6'4". Everybody's short, man.
I
don't know how tall you are.
Yeah.
I'm serious. I have no idea. You don't strike me as a particularly short person. So the fact that Eno is shorter than you is nothing.
It surprised me.
Okay,
So when we get to the end of this video, he's wearing a shirt, a t-shirt, and he's looking at the camera. I don't know, it's just kind of weird. It doesn't make any sense why you're like now backstage or somewhere in the back of this studio, and you're wearing this t-shirt and you're looking kind of weird. I don't know, it's really goofy unless you know what the t-shirt says and you know the connection to the t-shirt. What's on the t-shirt is the name of the play that his one true love in life left him to go do and pursue in like 1968, 69.
Oh, right.
Hermione Fotheringham. They lived together. They say that that's why he had red hair, because she was a redhead. You can see her in the videos that he did back in 67, 68 with Feathers, the Love You Till Tuesday film. She's the girl in those videos. But This is like his one true love. He wrote 2 songs about her in Space Oddity alone, and she bailed to go pursue this play. And the title of that play is on this t-shirt. And he's too smart not to do something deliberately. Does that make sense?
Oh, sure. Yeah,
He's calculatedly deliberate about what he does. And it's like, holy moly. Why is he telling us to go all the way back? Why is he taking it back a decade even before that?
Because it's all connected.
Right? And then he does that album, he doesn't tour it, and then he does Black Star.
I'm not quite sure what I'm supposed to do, so I'll just write some love to you.
We're going to step away from our discussion of the music and legacy of David Bowie for a few minutes. We'll crank up the True Tunes Jukebox and listen to a bit of Allan's music right after this.
Hey there, I'm Mark Feldbush from Columbus, Ohio. I'm a Patreon backer of the True Tunes podcast. I've also left a rating and review of the show at Apple Podcasts. It really wasn't that hard. It didn't cost me anything. But this show means a heck of a lot to me, and I know that reviews and ratings make a big difference when it comes to how and if others discover these conversations. Would you take a few minutes, maybe even while you're listening, if you're not driving of course, to leave a rating and a review? Even if you don't listen on Apple Podcasts, the reviews posted there push out the podcast to platforms all around the world. Oh, and take some time to tell your friends about the show. Let's drive the numbers up together. Thanks.
Smite the shepherd and the sheep shall be scattered. We're the scattered few. Died for me a lonely man. Showed me his love again and again. Can't hide the fact that he loves you. I'm here to tell you what to do. You think it's cool for me? Well, how about you? You died to set me free. Your love is true.
Although Scaterd Few didn't show up on the national stage until about 1990, Allan Aguirre, under his original pseudonym Rommel Domkes, began playing gospel-tinged punk music with his band in the clubs of LA much earlier. Scaterd Few was equally influenced by the art-forward edge of the emerging punk scene and the lingering countercultural aroma of the Jesus movement. The band would blend elements of early ska, punk, reggae, metal, and yes, the theatrical rock of David Bowie into a truly unique blend. And while Terry Scott Taylor had been helping the band with demos back in the early 80s, it was their 1990 album, produced by Taylor and engineered by Gene Eugene, that really rattled our little cages. The album opened with a 90-second blast that completely captured my attention and imagination.
Flesh for ears and flesh for eyes, deteriorate the God in disguise. Like we didn't get it, wasting away in the tracks of the chameleons with cycle games. Spirits is willing and the flesh is still weak, and corpses lay rotting, corpses still reek. Walk in the flesh and your members of
Kill the Sarks, a reference to the Greek word for flesh or sinful nature, is full-throttle punk, sure, but so much more. It's alternative, metal, and more than a little bit horror film, too. And right when it had its hooks in me, it just ended. Keep in mind that the modern ska revival was still a few years off when Scaterd Few brought their funky cauldron to bear. There simply was no frame of reference for the combination of sounds that made up Sin Disease. It was wiry and brash, like Jane's Addiction, and fast and chaotic, like Dead Kennedys. But the bass and drums frequently veered into an almost reggae realm, bringing bands like Bad Brains into the mix.
That are changing with the move of Yahweh's hand. May that understand take heart. His refuge is everlasting. Yeshua's name be praised. The night of sorrows passing shouts.
The guitar tone, though, was as brutal as any speed metal band out there, and the band was willing to change up rhythms in the middle of a song without notice.
Take you to my reproof, don't reject me cause I'm young. We're here for Yahweh, glory to magnify His Son. Hang on, get ready. We're here for Armageddon, prophetic unfolding. We need to work together. The vision of the church, man, is really getting bad. Don't preach by the media, somebody gonna have to make the news we've had. The spirit's moving to bring out the pot and stop the confusion. Take a life, your right, holy heart. Hang on, get ready. Wherever I begin and prophetic unfolding, we need to work together. The spirit's moving to bring out the pot and stop the confusion. Yeah, to work.
But the truly wild thing, the ingredient that none of us could define or contain, were those manic, rangy, seemingly out-of-control vocals slithering over the top of the whole thing like a dread-headed snake. Aguirre, always in complete control of his voice as a musical weapon, could move from lurking bass notes to untethered vibrato in the most awesomely disturbing ways.
Say the prayers if you believe in sex religion. Put the trust in men and not your way. Your time you make incisions. The hard boy don't take the stench away. Understand that who you are when you're sitting by yourself. It's for you need to sacrifice and not somebody else. Take a walk to see if there's some meaning behind this good tide of Yeshua's way. What I get under the signpost up ahead. So let's begin to start all over again. Understand that who you are when you're sitting by yourself. It's for you need to sacrifice and not somebody else.
Sin Disease was not just good Christian punk, it was one of those LPs that deserved consideration on the wider musical stage. Released by Alarma, a division of Frontline, the record never had a chance to succeed outside of the Christian underground. But at places like Cornerstone, and in the pages of True Tunes, Scaterd Few was instantly one of the coolest bands on the scene. Scaterd Few's label affiliation days were limited. They were controversial from the beginning, pulled from most Christian bookstores when rumors spread about the band, and eventually dropped by the label. By the time they released their follow-up album, Jawbone of an Ass, they were essentially an indie band working with a rotation of small labels. That album was initially released by Mike Knott's Blonde Vinyl label. After an extended hiatus, the band returned in 1998 with the Grandmother's Spaceship album. The final Scaterd Few offering, so far at least, was Omega No. 5 in 2002, released on Allan's own label. In the mid-90s, Allan started another project, the Britpop new wave post-punk band Spyglass Blue, that brought his Bowie influences even more to the front, while also displaying some goth darkwave tones.
Started again. talk about breaking the mold, you still care. Don't seem to care anymore. Let me tell you about the reasons for living.
And in the 2000s, Aguirre introduced Men as Trees Walking, an experimental alternative worship project that included members of his family and other friends. We're going to let the jukebox cool off now and head back for the final segment of my conversation with Allan right after this.
Hello, my name's Rob, and I'm one of the Patreon backers of the True Tunes podcast. I'm honored to invite you to join me in support of True Tunes by signing up on their email list. I know email is often annoying, but by being on the list, I get notified when new episodes drop and when new articles get posted at truetunes.com. Sometimes, John even sends out short notes and gives away records and swag and stuff. Super cool. But really, the point is that by staying directly connected, I know that they don't have to pay Facebook or anyone else in order for me to hear from them, and that's important. They don't send out too many emails either, and I'm always happy to get them. So really, it would be helpful if you join me over here. You can find the sign-up link on the front page at truetunes.com. Oh, and don't forget to add John's email address, jjt@truetunes.com, to your contacts so that the emails don't get caught in your spam filter. And if you have any feedback on the show or questions, you can email him and he'll get back to you. Thanks for listening.
All right, you're not too old for a sing-along, are you? Yeah, well, let's see.
Kicking in the head when he was 25. Mr. Speecher, don't want to stay alive when you're 25. Bruce is stealing clothes from unlocked cars. Freddy's got spots from ripping off the stars from his spice. Funky little Bob Rice. Television man is crazy, saying with you and I the liquor race. Man, I don't need TV when I got T-Rex. Brother, you guess I'm a dope dad.
Bowie, to me, felt like he was in the same, swimming in the same kind of waters as Peter Gabriel and U2 and others. He was looking at it in a different way, but it always felt very spiritual. And I don't know if that's just because I was very spiritually minded and I was seeing it in there, or if it was just genuinely in there. But I find that the last 10 years of his work, I just don't see how it makes any sense if he's not coming to a place in his life where he's starting to see that there's a certain spiritual connectedness to all of this that gives it resonance beyond irony or beyond the beauty of just culture or fashion or whatever.
So I was asked two or three times after he died if I thought, do you think he came to the knowledge of Messiah before he died. And I'm like, no, I actually don't. Even just you and I, and we've known each other for 30 years plus, have a difference. There's a variation in our definition of what salvation in Messiah means, I think, to an extent, right? Let alone a Bowie. I don't believe that he knew Jesus like you and I know Jesus, or even at that level at all. But he was a Tibetan Buddhist for most of the mid to late 60s, and then he became a superstar and kind of we all know he dabbled in the occult, and we know that he got really stupid and involved in the occult when he was living in LA in the mid 70s, which is why he went to Germany. Then he chilled out, probably got off a lot of the drugs that he was on, as far as maybe usage. Don't know if he was ever 100% clean. I don't know. And then we start seeing some things creep up. Then he did Outside, right, in the early 90s, which is again more leaning towards cultism, but we see little spikes, right? So we see little spikes like, for example, Word on a Wing. It's literally a prayer. He's literally praying and begging that he's like at least trying to align himself with this other spiritual thing. Everyone says Scary Monsters and then Heathen, right? Heathen is one of the most amazing records he ever did, and there's like a 20-year difference between the two of them. But there's a couple things that I knew about the name and the title and the cover art, but then you mentioned it. There's a song he does called I Would Be Your Slave. So he literally is paraphrasing that Christian bookstore thing about footprints in the sand. Oh, when you only saw one, I didn't leave you, I was carrying you, right? That thing. Right. Well, right. He literally says in that song that if you would make yourself real to me, I would be your slave. I know he had experimented with Christianity, but what is the number one obstacle? What is the number one gnat the majority of man strains on? The supremacy or the exclusivity of Jesus Christ of Nazareth as the only door, as the only way, as the only bridge to God the Father or to some supreme higher being, consciousness, whatever you people call it, right? People cannot handle the exclusivity of Jesus. And we see that in the Gospels. John the Baptist, his own cousin, when he's in jail, sends his disciples to Jesus and asks him, are you the Messiah? Flat out. Are you the Messiah, or should we be waiting for someone else? I love Jesus' answer to John's disciples, his cousin's disciples. He says, tell John, the blind see, the deaf hear, the lame walk, and the poor are receiving the gospel. And blessed is he that is not offended by me. And everybody is offended by Jesus. That's why we have all sorts of denominations out there. Right?
I think a lot of people are offended by Christians
more
than they're offended by Jesus.
It has to start somewhere, though, right?
They don't have a chance to even get to Jesus because they got to go through his people most of the time.
I'm set around and wait. I don't give a damn. I don't see the point at all. No footprints in the sand. I'll give you all my love. Nothing else is free.
I know for a fact he had a hard time with this, with the exclusivity of Jesus, which is why he's worded on a wing that there's that prayer, and then the one about I will be your slave. If you would just make yourself known to me, if you would make yourself real and known to me, I would be your slave. That's a cry for help, man. And you caught that. Sure. But then the part that I knew was heathen. The word heathen is upside down on the cover, and his eyes are all glazed out. And he flat out says, on Regis's morning show, Bowie's on there, and they're going through album covers, and he asked about it. And Regis asked about the cover art and why heathen. And he goes, well, the word heathen is upside down, but then my eyes, they look like a fish to represent Christianity. Yeah. So there's this duality, there's this struggle. Heathen upside down. My eyes are the way they look on the cover because it represents fish, which represents Christianity. There's a tug of war going on. And there's that song on that album. Right. And then you go to Black Star, the last record he makes. So the record came out on a Friday, his birthday, and then he was dead Sunday night. I got the pre-release on Thursday night, and I'm doing what I've done since I was 12 years old. New Bowie record, I'm sitting down like at a table to eat, and I'm just going to consume this thing, right? And so while I'm consuming this record, I remember my wife was in the room, but she was reading, and so she can hear it, but she's not paying attention. And I remember saying something, why is it so dark? And then I said, and then when Black Star came on, I go, why is he being so blasphemous? Because he says, you're a flash in the pan, I'm the great I am. I'm like, why is he being blasphemous towards God like that, And then halfway through the record, I remember pausing it and saying to the room, I think he knows he's going to die. And then he dies. And then as I was listening to Black Star again, I realized, I had it reversed. It's not him talking to God, it's God talking to him. Right. I'm going to here's the stanza. I'm going to take you home. I can't tell you how. You're a flash in the pan. I'm the great I am. Yes. There's that struggle again. Even to the very end of his life, he's still struggling with this. So what could the struggle possibly be? Well, any basic form of Christianity introduces the Jesus character into the equation. And that's where we lose the 80%. I cannot submit myself to the reality of a Jesus Christ character being the only door, the only way, the only truth, the only life. And I have to go through him to get to God. It's just too offensive for a lot of humanity.
How many times does an angel fall? How many people lie instead of talking tall? He trod on sacred ground, he cried loud into the crowd. I'm a black star, I'm a black star, I'm not against you. I can't answer why. Just go with me. I'ma take you home. Take your passport and shoes and your sedatives and booze. You're the flash in the pan. I'm the great I am.
I imagine growing up in England, growing up in Europe, growing up in a post-Christian culture is very different than growing up in fundamentalist America, especially growing up in a Christian subculture in fundamentalist America. So in England, you're learning biblical stories, you're learning stuff in school, but it's taught almost in the same way that you're learning about Zeus and Jupiter but it is kind of part of your DNA culturally. You're Anglican, that's part of the deal, right? It's part of the culture, and so part of that artistic instinct to take things, break them apart, look at them, turn them upside down, put lipstick on it, whatever. It makes sense that he would be analyzing that stuff and critiquing it. That was his generation was doing that, but then. He kneels down and says the Lord's Prayer at Freddie Mercury's, at that memorial service. There's times where it's like he's kind of saying, this is still a part of my life. I'm not rejecting it outright. And I know that for some people in the evangelical fundamentalist realm, something like Buddhism is considered to be completely apart, where there are other traditions that would say, well, you could be a Christian and still use, Buddhist practices in terms of how you pray without.
I'm not one of those guys, by the way.
Sure. But I'm saying there could be other ways of understanding, like prayer practices or spiritual practices that don't require you rejecting Jesus. But I just find, I wonder where it does kind of get interesting to me, and for this conversation, is I think that the world that you kind of skirted up against, and I say that because you were never really kind of a main CCM Christian rock artist.
What do you mean?
On a good day, you were.
I'm not as big as DC Talk. Wait a second.
No.
Don't you know who I think I am?
Now we've gotten somewhere. If that's who you think we are, the source of your frustration has become apparent. I think that you were kind of always.
Oh my gosh.
The fringe. And even when we talked about you in True Tunes back in the print magazine, we were like, oh, there's this really cool alternative underground LA punk band that has these spiritual ideas, and to us it was like, great. But the point is, you bumped up against that world, right?
Yeah.
But you were never like in that main lane.
Right. Not because I didn't want to be, but apparently when you actually believe the Bible and you believe like in Charismatica and you believe the things that I believe, they're not too happy with that.
You're not welcome in the mall of shops that
you're gonna rattle the car. You're gonna actually ask the hard questions. You're gonna say, "I'm sorry, that's not in there."
Sure, okay. But it does seem like the popular version, the successful version of the Christian subculture in America that emerged was to say, create Christian versions of popular rock music, not to actually engage. Like you could have probably become very successful if you became the Christian David Bowie. Like if you took that style and then made very obviously evangelical lyrics and said, instead of let's dance, let's praise, you probably could have sold some records, right?
One, I never tried to be a Christian version of, and two, I couldn't sleep at night if I wrote a song called Jesus instead of Blue Jean. I just met a guy. Right. You know what? But, all my contemporaries in the early 80s were already doing that.
Right. But so my point is, we're sitting here talking about Bowie's music because we value it. It matters to us. And regardless of the theology that he particularly held, we still find value in that work.
Blue Jean, I just met a girl named Blue Jean. Blue Jean, she got a camouflage face on the money. Remember, they always let you down when you need them. Oh, Blue Jean, is heaven really sweeter than Blue Jean? She got a police bike. She got turned up nose.
How do you think people of faith might consider tweaking the way they listen to music and approach artists like a David Bowie so that they're getting a richer experience out of that than strictly asking the question, do you think that this is Christian or not?
Well, I know for a fact there's a huge demographic of Christianity that absolutely can't believe that I still would listen to Bowie or even admit that I would still listen to Bowie or that I liked him or that he had any. They can't handle that. Apparently I'm not like most people. I want to know how we got here. I want to know what were the steps that were taken to get to, right? I mean, do you know how many people don't understand that the worship music that we've been listening to for the last 20 years or almost 25, 30 years comes directly from Delirious, which comes directly from U2? I mean, people don't care about stuff like that.
Which comes from the Ramones and David
Well,
Bowie.
that's what he said, but I don't believe U2 was ever a punk rock band. I don't believe they ever looked like a punk rock band, nor do I believe they ever sounded like a punk rock band. And I'm all about everything they put out pre-Boy, as well as Boy and October, you know what I'm saying? And I'm a fan. I'm a pre-Boy fan. I loved all that early stuff, like a lot. I mean, come on, they were so young and so good. Come on.
You don't think it's possible that punk looked and sounded different to a bunch of 15-year-olds in Dublin than it did to a kid in LA?
Not when it looked like that for kids their age at the same exact time. But anyway, what was the question?
Well, just that we've gone far afield, haven't we?
So I'm all about how did we get here? You know what I'm saying? It's like, to me, that's important. And so, if you look at my line of rock and roll, we're gonna go Elvis, Beatles, Elvis, Lennon, Bowie. You know what I'm saying? And that's a whole stream there. There's a whole stream there that goes new wave, punk, the 80s retro stuff, even ska. I mean, it's just, I want to know how we got here. I want to know what made Bowie tick. I want to know what made John Lennon tick, which is why I love and respect rockabilly, and then go the step back, the black spirituals, the African American spirituals. I'm that guy. I want to know how we got here. People don't care how we got here. It's like, everything that happened in the 90s and 2000s in Christian rock. Guess what? I was a part of the inception of that, and that's documented. And I'm not saying, that's to give myself a pat in the back. No, but to answer your question, I think. I was in the studio with a band, and they were doing a part. I'm like, this is a really good part, but do you know where this comes from? What you're trying to pull off musically, right here, you can. Let me play you Jane's Addiction doing that exact riff, that exact everything right here. Oh, now let me play you Back in the Saddle Again with Aerosmith doing that, because that's where Jane's, whether Dave Navarro knows it or not, that's where it comes from.
Right.
So what you're trying to do in 2003, let me show you how it was done in 1988 with this band, and then let me show you how it was done in 1970 whatever with Aerosmith. To me, that's important, because if you know, and this applies to faith, I don't believe Christianity originated with a bunch of Gentiles in the 3rd and 4th century, because it didn't. This is a Hebrew God with a Hebrew Messiah, not Rome, not Greek. To me, that's very important to understand what it is that's what they're trying to tell us in the New Testament. If you annihilate the Old Testament, I guarantee you, I promise you, you will not understand anything that's going on in the New Testament. It's impossible. In the same way, musically, I think it'll make you a better artist. It'll make you a smarter artist. My original instrument is drums. You know why I was such a good drummer? Because I had all this stuff inside of me. So whenever somebody would bust out something, I knew the exact drum to apply to it, because it's already been done. So the more you have, the more tools you have, I think the more proficient you will be in your craft. It doesn't matter what that is.
I think you're talking about the difference between understanding the fundamentals and being a fundamentalist. Like, when you understand the fundamentals, you can build on those to become excellent at whatever the thing is you want to do. As a drummer, you understood the fundamentals. The Beatles understood the fundamentals. Bob Dylan went and hung out with Woody Guthrie, and he understood the fundamentals. When you're a fundamentalist, you limit everything back to one thing, and then you refuse to grow or learn or expand. Like, a fundamentalist might say, well, then we're only going to, and then you put hard limits on things, and you
and we're still talking about music, right?
And so to me, like, to take your fundamentals versus fundamentalist idea on the musical side, or even to use your Hebrew, I love that example of if your Christianity is only based on the Reformation, say, or something like that, and you're skipping the Old Testament. Learning to listen, even as a kid, if I said, okay, this thing about, say, a Bowie thing is a stumbling block to me. This is a troubling. This is off-putting to me. Maybe it's the gender bending thing, or it's something that goes against. It rubs the wrong way. What is he actually getting at? And then I start to go deeper into that and say, what are the questions he's asking? What is the energy and the culture that he's tapping into? I can actually get to a place where I go, okay, now I can find some resonance. I can feel some commonality with what's going on there. And I feel like if we listen hard enough and generously enough, we can actually get to that point and say, you know what, the thing we're talking about, we actually share that. We actually do have that in common. And then we can earn ourselves the right to talk and share, and we find people leaning into some of those ideas we would love to talk about. Art and rock and roll and concerts, that seemed to me at one point in my life to be an invitation for people to argue and talk and discuss and debate and have spiritual experiences. Right. And then instead it became this propaganda machine where it was really more about finding people that already agreed with you about certain propositional things and distancing yourself from people that didn't. Bowie seemed to be willing to take risks and to offend his fans and put people off. But then over time, everybody kind of came, well, I guess he kind of had a point. I guess, well, that was better than I thought it was.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I live in Utah. The more I know about the Mormon faith, the better I will be at having conversations with them regarding faith. Yeah. Same idea, right? The more I know about music, the better musician I will be. And I'm not just, a lot of people would want to pigeonhole me into, oh yeah, he's only into Bowie and punk rock. That's it. That's because they don't know me. But if you know me, you know that I've got quite a palette of in my background of music.
Dip back into the murky past here. This is a song that I originally recorded. It's the first song that I recorded as David Bowie in 1966.
Time, Dad says I brought dishonor. My head's bound in shame. It seems that I've blackened the family name. My mother says that she can't stand the neighbors talking. I've gotta pack my bags, leave this home, start walking. I'm guilty. I wish that I was sorry this time. Wish that I could pay for my crime, but I can't help thinking about me. Can't help thinking about me. Can't help thinking about me. Remember when we used to go to church on Sundays? I lay awake at night, terrified of school on Mondays. It's too late now. I wish I was a child again. Wish I felt secure again, but I can't help thinking about me.
So what are you up to these days? Are you doing music still? Are you making records?
So we're re-releasing everything. Scaterd Few, Spyglass Blue, vinyl, CD, remastered. So we've got all that coming out. That'll be nice. A lot of people are going to be able to have, like Jawbone of Vanessa is going to be on vinyl. That's never been on vinyl.
Oh my gosh. Put me down for one of those.
And we're redoing CDs too. So, and it'll have distribution. It's going to be really exciting. Anyway, so I've been planning on doing new music for a while now. This is the longest I've ever gone in my entire life without putting out music. So I'm a writer now. I write. I've been writing books since 2017. I've got like 3 or 4 books out. And you can get them at acaciagrovepress.com. So I'm a book writer. I'm writing about theology, doctrine, apologetics.
Very glam rock kind of stuff.
An old friend of mine a few years ago said, so what are you up to these days? I go, well, I'm writing books. And he goes, but of course you are. As if, this was always going to end up, I didn't know. To me, it's fascinating because I'm a big study on human social behavior. I mean, you have to be to do what I do. But I can sit here and tell you X, Y, Z in song form with a band, with music as its delivering agent. And people are like, yeah. I say the exact thing in print, X, Y, Z, and they lose their freaking minds, and they're coming out, they want to drag me into the street and crucify me. There is something about, but it's music, so it's art, it's subjective, right? But the lyric, it's the same lyric. I can take the same lyric and put it on paper without music, and they're like, crucify him. It's amazing. What a phenomenon. And that's what I've been experiencing. But yes, finding new ways to offend people, abso-freaking-lutely. So anyway, I've been writing books, apologetics, theology, doctrine. Got about 3 or 4 of them out. I'm doing live streams, chameleonchurch.com/live for that schedule, and new music. So when I write, I've been listening to a lot of instrumental worship. Bethel's come out with some good stuff. There's a bunch of stuff that's come out, right? So I've been listening to this instrumental, what's his name? Gabriel Wilson produced like the first one that they did. Excellent work. But anyway, I've been listening to this stuff, and the more that's come out now, there's other groups or other people are coming out with them, these instrumental worship albums. I started hearing a common thread, and I'm like, what's going on here? And then I realized, like about a year ago, wait a second. I've been listening to this stuff since I was 13 years old. It's Low. It's the instrumental stuff from Low and Heroes. People are literally copying, ripping stuff off from those 2 albums and putting it into this worship stuff. And I'm like, no wonder my wife calls it casino music. She hates it. No wonder I'm gravitating to this instrumental worship stuff, because I've been listening to it since I was a young boy, 13 years old, because of Low and Heroes. So I got this I upgraded my recording studio. And so in order for me to learn this new gear and tech and all that, the best thing I'm going to put out an instrumental worship album, and then I'm going to do a Spyglass Blue. This is God willing, and then a Ministries Walking thing. But yeah, okay. I'm very excited about that.
Awesome. Well, you know what Bowie said, talent borrows and genius steals, right?
All day long.
Well, hey, say hi to your family for me.
I will, likewise.
It's been too long. I would love to see everybody in person again, but thanks for taking time with us today. This has been great, and we look forward to
my pleasure.
Catching up
Appreciate
again.
So many times I think of all the ways and how you fed my mind, and always through I try so hard to not remember. The more I do, the less I miss the times when I believed in you. And now I know that all you ever said was never something I ever needed, appreciated, and now I've made it, no longer tainted, because of you. Because of you.
Thanks, Allan. That was everything I had hoped it would be. You can find all of the Scaterd Few, Spyglass Blue, and Ministries Walking music in the Faceless Gen Recording Company store at Bandcamp. Go to fgrecco.bandcamp.com. Of course, you can find that link on the show notes page as well. And if you ever have a chance to check episode 10 of the first season of the ABC TV show Wife Swap from back in 2004, you definitely should. The Aguirre family was featured as one side of the swap, with a very strict religious family as the other half, and the payoff was, well, fantastic. As I pull out my soapbox to wrap this episode up, I want to consider my original idea of weirdos and oddballs, the cast-offs that Bowie mainstreamed, and that Cornerstone made such a home for with people like me and Allan. Obviously, there's a lot to consider in Bowie's music when it comes to alienation, reconciliation, meaning, and redemption. We've traveled the road quite a bit here today, and I feel we've barely scratched the surface. I love that about Bowie's music and great music in general. It rewards deep consideration. When you dive into it, there is something waiting for you there. I appreciate Allan Aguirre's confidence, and I'm humbled by our mutual respect. I may have a slightly different take on some aspects of life and faith, but I think we are generally rowing in the same direction. It seems to me that this stumbling point he mentions, that point of exclusivity, is worth some reflection. Maybe that is the problem many people have with the gospel. They just can't handle the idea that there's only one way. Then again, Others suggest that when Jesus was on the cross, praying for God to forgive us because we knew not what we were doing, maybe that prayer gets answered. Maybe, somehow, His love finds us when we aren't looking for it. Maybe, somehow, we are the most likely to encounter that love when we are as far away from what this world calls normal as we can possibly be. I'd still rather be counted among the outcasts and the rabble, the punks looking to Jesus for healing, answers, or food, than among the good religious folks with the power and the politics and the traditions on their side. I'm not as confident as Allan that Bowie didn't know Jesus at some level. I just can't get around 1 John 4, where the disciple reminds us that love is of God, and everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. It seems to me that the more Bowie, and really this applies to anyone, studies love, the closer they get to God. I hear it shot through his music. On the other end of the spectrum, I hear profoundly religious people sounding farther and farther from God as they get farther and farther from love. Early in his career, before he was recording mostly original material, Bowie demoed a song written by a highly regarded singer-songwriter, Leslie Duncan.
Love is the opening door. Love is what we came here for. No one can offer you more. You know what I mean? Have your eyes really seen?
I had a similar feeling last summer when I got to sit in with Savior Machine's Eric Clayton as his electric guitarist at the Audiofeed Festival. We covered Bowie's Loving the Alien, one of my favorite of his songs and certainly a highlight performance for me. Sitting up there long after midnight, surrounded by friends, singing that lament of a prayer about loving outsiders and believing the strangest things, with Eric's mournful baritone pleading for mercy from somewhere, well, it was exhaustingly holy. I'm over trying to categorize things like this, and I'm certainly not going to make claims about Bowie's beliefs. I will say that his work has deepened my faith, and enjoying it in the company of my broken, outcast friends has enriched my life in indescribable ways. And if this even approximates what it means to walk in the way of love, then consider me an absolute beginner indeed. Okay, I'm climbing off my soapbox now. That's going to do it for this episode of the True Tunes podcast. Thank you to Allan Aguirre for the excellent conversation and for 30 plus years of friendship and great music. You can find a list of all of the music from this episode and links to all of Allan's music and books on the show notes page for this episode at truetunes.com/Bowie. And Patreon backers, you'll be getting a special video file of my conversation with Allan, so enjoy that. If you would like to support this show, head over to patreon.com/truetunes, or if you'd like to give us a one-time gift, you can find the PayPal link on the show notes page. And thank you for doing all the other stuff, leaving us the ratings and reviews at Apple Podcasts, subscribing to the weekly Spotify mixtape, and signing up for the email list. This podcast was written and produced by me, JJT, with co-production, editing, and sound design by Bruce A. Brown for Gyroscope Productions. Our theme song is a special instrumental mix of Full Circle by Phil Keggy and Rex Paul. The contents of this program are protected by U.S. copyright law and are the intellectual property of Gyroscope Productions, with the exception of songs or clips that are from previously copywritten materials. Everything on this episode is used by permission or under fair use provisions. Gyroscope Productions can be reached at jjt@truetunes.com or P.O. Box 60401, Nashville, Tennessee 37206. Until next time, this is JJT reminding you to stay tuned and stay true. Peace.
You're aware of a deeper existence, maybe a temporary reassurance that indeed there is no beginning, no end. And all at once the outward appearance of meaning is transcended, and you find yourself struggling to comprehend a deep and formidable mystery. I'm dying. You are dying. Second by second, all is transient. Does it matter? Do I bother? Yes, I do. Life is fantastic. It never ends. It only changes. Flesh to stone to flesh, and round and round. Best keep walking.